Now, a cold air intake is usually everyone's first step on the journey to having a faster car.
I want to go fast.
I mean, what car enthusiast hasn't put one of those on? And a cold air intake increases performance by flowing cooler, more dense air into the engine faster than the factory air intake does. And as you guys saw in my last C5 Corvette video, we installed a Callaway Honker cold air intake into the Vette. Now, I was super excited to do this because Callaway, from all the research that I did, is the best intake money can buy for the C5 Corvette. It had a dyno tested, not on my car, but on a stock motor with no custom tuning done. It had a 16.5 brake horsepower gain, and some may have gotten even more than that. And it does all this while looking like a factory item in the engine bay. It's pretty cool. And it wasn't the easiest install in the world, I'll be the first to say that. I also had my fair share of f***ups installing it, and it does require a little cutting. And it's also not the cheapest, at $549. So, was it all worth it? Well, I'm gonna take you guys on my first ride in the C5 Corvette since I put that intake on. And I'll tell you what I think and give you my reaction to it. Libido effect, placebo effect, I don't know why I always call it that, but I've done quite a few miles in the car the way that it was before I changed it. And here are the changes that I've noticed. First up is the throttle sensitivity. Now that could be because the Callaway Honker intake moves the mass airflow sensor to right in front of the throttle body like it is on a C6 Vette, but that's the first thing I've noticed, is the throttle a little bit more sensitive. I like it. Next thing I've noticed is the low to mid-end torque. Now, my Vette's a little different because right now I'm running long tube headers, an X-pipe, and straight pipes. There's no mufflers. So my car already lacks a little bit of back pressure to begin with, and I definitely noticed that when I put this exhaust setup on. I noticed that I had less torque. With this intake, I feel like I've gained a little bit back. Great. With this intake, I feel like I've gained a little bit of it back. It's right, it's more in the middle than it is in the low end, but it's just enough to notice when you go to do a pull, when you go to do an acceleration, it puts you back in the seat just that little bit more. Another thing I've noticed that you may not be able to tell from this because it's just a bunch of noise with that exhaust setup, but especially when I heard the car revving from the outside, this intake has a little bit of a deeper and a little bit of a more throaty tone to it. The factory airbox from the videos that I saw is pretty quiet. My Vette never had that factory airbox on it, so I never knew what it sounded like. But the cheaper intake that I had, as you guys saw, that one to me made a little bit more of a high-pitched like psh sound when you first stabbed the throttle. And I honestly wasn't a huge fan of it. You rarely heard it when the car was under load. This one though, I am noticing just little bits of, like there's that low end torque. As we get on the highway here, I'll show you the next thing I noticed. Now, I'll upshift so you can actually hear me. The next thing I've noticed is, oh, can you shut it? The next thing I've noticed is the higher RPM. I feel that the most horsepower gain is at the top end. Now, I'm sure a lot more is going to change when I finally do get the Vette tuned, but definitely in the higher RPMs, like 4,000 and above, that's where you can definitely feel the most gain, I think. And I quite like it. more than the horsepower. It could be because my car was lacking torque so much without the mufflers. And the last thing I'm noticing, which is pretty beneficial actually, my Vette always ran hot. It didn't really matter if it was a hot day, a cold day. For some reason, my Vette would always somehow find a way to climb up in the temperatures. I haven't noticed much over 220 degrees since driving this thing. I know that's a problem with the Veraram intake, is that the place that it puts the scoops blocks cool air from coming and cooling off the engine. It brings that cool air into the engine, but it doesn't cool off the engine like the Vette's designed to have with those scoops. So it keeps the engine bay temperatures hot, which of course is a factor to what your coolant temp is. So overall, do I like it? I love it. I'm super excited to get this thing on the dyno and see the horsepower and torque gain from having the nicest cold air intake you can get for the C5 and having long tube headers on this thing with an X-pipe. I think this is an incredibly well-engineered cold air intake. It's the best designed, and there's science behind this one. It's not just some big cone air filter that sits out in front of the radiator like, oh yeah, cold air's out there. Callaway is a great name. They have racing pedigree behind their name. I think it's worth every penny. So I'll include a link to the Callaway Honker intake down in the description below. And if you want to see what the install process is like for the Callaway, I'll also include a link to that install video. And if you're curious about the rest of the mods on my C5, I'll include a video that I did a tour, a complete walk around of my Vette and all the mods that are on it. But thank you guys very much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Happy motoring.